An elderly couple walked into Denver International Airport, eager to meet their newborn granddaughter. At their side was Rex, a retired canine now serving as the wife's emotional support dog. But as they approached security, Rex began barking uncontrollably, drawing startled glances. What no one realized was that Martha's pacemaker had silently failed. Without Rex's instincts, she might not have survived the next few minutes. This is the gripping true story of how a loyal dog saved a life when technology failed. If you believe in the bond between humans and dogs, like this video, subscribe, and stay till the end. The automatic doors whooshed open, letting in a burst of the bustling energy unique to a major airport. Ronald and Martha Keene stood just inside Terminal 4 at Denver International, adjusting their rolling suitcases and trying to orient themselves amidst the throng of travelers. Ronald, tall and wiry at 75, peered over his wire-rimmed glasses at the large flight information display. Martha, a petite woman of 72 with soft silver curls tucked under a wide amend hat, clutched her handbag a little tighter as she glanced around. "It's so loud in here," she said softly, her voice nearly swallowed by the announcements echoing overhead. "Don't worry, love," Ronald replied, reaching for her hand with a gentle squeeze. "We'll be on that plane soon, holding little Emily in no time." A smile flickered across Martha's lips at the thought of meeting their newborn granddaughter. After 2 long years apart, this trip meant everything to them. By her side, tethered to a short leash, sat Rex, a large, graying German shepherd with deep amber eyes that seemed to read the room in a single glance. His ears twitched subtly, constantly processing the symphony of sounds around them. Passers-by often gave Rex admiring looks, unaware of his remarkable past. Once a top canine with the state police, Rex had retired after 9 years of service and now served a different, quieter purpose: emotional support. Official papers tucked neatly into Ronald's travel wallet certified Rex as an ESA animal, helping Martha manage the lingering anxiety that sometimes overtook her since her cardiac surgery. Today, Rex had been calm, padding along confidently through security and check-in lines during their past flights. But as they approached the Delta Airlines counter for this last leg to Charleston, something shifted. "Flight 328 to Charleston, checking bags?" the young attendant asked brightly. Ronald stepped forward, handing over their IDs and tickets. Martha moved a little to the side, smoothing her cardigan and murmuring softly to Rex. That was when it started. Without warning, Rex pinned back. A low growl rumbled in his throat, a sound so foreign Martha froze mid- "Ronnie?" she whispered. Before her husband could respond, Rex let out a sharp, insistent bark. Heads turned. The attendant's fingers hovered mid-keystroke over the keyboard. Ronald frowned, tugging the leash slightly. "Rex, heel." Another bark, louder this time. The German shepherd's gaze was fixed on Martha, body tense, hackles rising. The leash vibrated in Ronald's grip as Rex took a half-step forward, his bark now carrying an edge of alarm. "Sir, is your dog okay?" asked a uniformed TSA officer who had noticed the disturbance. The question hung awkwardly in the air as travelers began glancing over. Martha looked bewildered, seats coloring with embarrassment. "He's never done this," she managed to say. Rex wasn't reacting to another passenger or an unknown bag. He was reacting to her. "Maybe it's the crowd," Ronald suggested uncertainly, gently leading Martha back a step. "Let's just step aside for a moment." But Rex wouldn't budge. Instead, he circled Martha's legs once, twice, barking sharply each time. His head pressed against her hip, nose twitching rapidly as if trying to sense something invisible. Ronald's heart began to race. He knew Rex. This wasn't stress or a random outburst. This was a trained response, one he'd seen years ago during ride-alongs when Rex had alerted him to the side area while we sort this out, the TSA officer said, though his tone was gentler than strict. Seeing the elderly couple and well-behaved service dog, he opted for caution rather than confrontation. "Of course," Ronald replied, trying to mask the growing concern in his voice. They followed the officer to a less crowded corner near the family screening lane. "He's never done this before," Ronald said again, as much to himself as anyone else. Martha sat on a nearby bench, her breath coming a little faster than usual. Rex immediately positioned himself in front of her knees, gaze locked onto her chest with a focused intensity that unsettled even Ronald. "Easy boy," he murmured, stroking the dog's head. But Rex wasn't relaxing. Not at all. The TSA officer radioed for a supervisor, who soon arrived accompanied by an airport paramedic. Just in case, the supervisor explained, "Sometimes these dogs can pick up things before people feel anything. You never know." Ronald exchanged a glance with Martha. She looked pale now, one hand pressed lightly to her sternum. "I feel fine," she whispered, though her voice trembled. Rex barked again 3 times, sharp and insistent. The paramedic knelt down in front of her. "Ma'am, would you mind if I just check your pulse and vitals real quick, just to be safe?" Martha hesitated but nodded. The cuff inflated around her arm. The paramedic's expression shifted subtly as he read the results. "Your pulse is irregular, ma'am. Let's check your oxygen levels too." Martha's brow furrowed. "I thought it was just nerves," she murmured. But even as she spoke, Rex let out another low whine, now resting his massive head against her lap, vibrating with tension. Ronald felt his stomach twist. He wasn't a doctor, but he knew enough about heart conditions, and he knew enough about Rex to trust when the dog said something was wrong, deeply wrong. "You're going to call our medical team down here to take a closer look," the paramedic said gently. "It may be nothing, but given your history..." He didn't finish the sentence, but the implication was clear. As the paramedic stepped aside to radio for further assistance, Ronald sat down next to Martha and took her hand. Rex remained vigilant at her feet, eyes trained on her as if willing her to understand the warning. "It's okay," Ronald whispered. "Whatever happens, we'll handle it. Rex knows." We listened to him. Across the bustling terminal, life continued unabated. Boarding calls, luggage wheels clattering, voices rising and falling in the background. But for the Keonis, the world had narrowed to this corner, this moment, and the steady presence of a dog who refused to be ignored. The young TSA agent, Matthew Ortiz, had been monitoring the family screening line when the disturbance drew his attention. Barely 24, fresh out of academy training, Matthew prided himself on vigilance. He had been taught in no uncertain terms to trust the instincts of trained canine units. Now, watching the large German Shepherd emit sharp, deliberate barks while fixating on the elderly woman, his pulse quickened. Something didn't feel right. He glanced toward his supervisor stationed across the concourse, then keyed his radio. "Supervisor Klein, I've got a possible canine alert at checkpoint Delta 4, Family Lane. Retired unit, but the handler's reporting abnormal behavior." A pause crackled through the radio before the response came. "Copy, Ortiz. Visual contact on the subject?" "You, sir." Elderly couple, traveling with a certified ESA dog. The animal is actively alerting on or near the female passenger. Another pause, shorter this time. "Hold position. I'm en route." Matthew set his jaw and moved closer. "Sir, ma'am, I'm Officer Ortiz with TSA. I understand your dog's a support animal, but his behavior suggests he may have detected something unusual. For everyone's safety, I'll need to inspect your belongings. Is that all right?" Ronald looked from Matthew to Martha, then back to Rex, who now stood between his wife and the agent, growling low. "He's not aggressive," Ronald said. "He's trained. He used to be canine for narcotics detection." Matthew nodded, eyes narrowing. "That's exactly why we're taking this seriously, sir." Supervisor Klein arrived, solid man with years of field experience evident in the way he scanned the scene in seconds. He knelt to Rex's level briefly, observing the dog's posture. Then he straightened and addressed the couple. "I'm sure this is just a precaution," he said in a calm tone. "Because your dog is giving an active alert, TSA protocol requires us to screen your carry-ons and any personal effects. Would you please allow us to proceed?" Ronald hesitated, but Martha, pale and visibly distressed, nodded faintly. "Of course," Ronald said, voice taut. Klein signaled 2 additional agents, who carry-ons and small roller bags, placing them onto a separate screening table. Rex followed the movement with laser focus, tail rigid, muscles taut. Matthew kept his gaze on the dog, noting that while Rex tracked the bags, his barking resumed only when Martha shifted in her seat. "Let's begin with the bags," Klein instructed. One agent ran the items through a secondary scanner while another performed a manual inspection, opening each compartment methodically. First, the black roller bags, closed, neatly folded, a worn photo album, a small jewelry pouch. Nothing amiss. Then Martha's handbag, wallet, travel documents, prescription pill organizer, a paperback novel. Again, nothing triggering an alert. Klein looked to Matthew. Anything? Negative, sir, no trace hits on the scanner. Visual inspection clean. Yet Rex remained agitated. When the agents set the bags aside and Martha attempted to stand, Rex immediately blocked her path, barking once, sharp, commanding. Klein's brows furrowed. That's not a narcotics alert, he murmured, half to himself. He's trying to signal something else. I'm telling you, Ronald said, voice rising with emotion. He's never done this before. Not since his active days. He's trained to alert on more than just sense. He knows when Martha's in distress. He saved her from panic attacks before. But this is different. Matthew absorbed the information quickly. While TSA's primary concern remained security threats, training had covered the potential for medical alerts from service animals. He exchanged a glance with Klein, who gave a slight nod. Ma'am, if you're feeling unwell, we can call airport medical services again, or we can proceed with a full body scan to rule out external causes. It's your choice. Martha, though visibly shaken, managed to whisper, I think I can walk to the scanner. Ronald reached for her elbow. Easy, love, he said softly. Together they rose. Rex immediately pressed close to Martha's side, his body tense. The small group proceeded toward the advanced imaging scanner. As Martha approached the entry point, Rex erupted again, this time with greater urgency, barking in rapid bursts and attempting to lunge between her and the machine. Matthew instinctively stepped forward, blocking the scanner's operator with one arm. Hold it, he barked. The room froze. Travelers nearby turned to stare. Klein moved swiftly to Rex's handler, Ronald. Sir, we can't allow her into that scanner until we know what's triggering this response. Is there any chance she's carrying something medical, implants, devices, anything that could be compromised? Ronald's face drained of color. Her pacemaker, he whispered. She has an implantable cardioverter defibrillator. It's never been a problem before. Klein's expression sharpened. And when was her last checkup? 3 months ago. Everything was fine. Martha's hand trembled against Ronald's arm. I don't feel fine now, she admitted faintly. Rex whined urgently, eyes locked on her chest, body rigid as stone. Klein keyed his radio again. Medical emergency at Delta 4 checkpoint. Immediate paramedic response requested. Possible cardiac device malfunction. Matthew watched as his supervisor took full control, moving Martha to a nearby bench and maintaining a clear perimeter. The TSA agents carefully disengaged from the scanning lane, redirecting foot traffic as instructed. Rex isn't wrong, Matthew said quietly, standing beside Klein. The older man nodded grimly. No, he isn't. And thank God someone was paying attention. There was a sudden sharp crackle of thunder. Paramedics inbound. ETA 3 minutes. In the brief, tense silence that followed, Rex remained planted before Martha, growling low, muscles twitching. Ronald knelt beside his wife, voice trembling. Stay with me, darling. Help's coming. Martha closed her eyes, lips moving soundlessly. Rex's growl deepened once more. Martha's breath came in shallow, uneven pulls as she sat hunched on the narrow bench, her hands trembling in her lap. Rex, never one to break formation or protocol, had shifted from his protective stance to an uncharacteristic display of anxiety. His ears were pinned flat, mouth partially open in a rasping pant, and then, without warning, he released a high-pitched whine that cut sharply through the ambient hum of the terminal. Ronald reached for her shoulder. Martha, are you all right? He asked, voice cracking. Before she could answer, her body lurched forward slightly, eyes fluttering closed for a brief, terrifying instant. That was when Rex reacted. In an instant, the German Shepherd rose on his hind legs and placed his front paws against Martha's knees. Then her chest, emitting another sharp, keening sound that drew gasps from the watching TSA agents and bystanders. The pressure of his claws, though instinctively controlled, caused Martha to sway further, her frail frame nearly tipping sideways. Ronald caught her arm just in time, lowering her back onto the bench as Rex began pawing urgently at her lap, whining now in a tone almost frantic. Get that dog back, someone shouted from nearby, and 2 TSA agents instinctively moved forward, arms raised in a defensive posture. Matthew Ortiz hesitated, torn between what his training dictated and the raw instinct that something beyond protocol was happening. Supervisor Klein, however, stepped in quickly. "Hold positions. Don't touch the dog," he barked, though even his voice betrayed tension. Something's wrong with the woman, but the situation had already begun to spiral. Rex, sensing the approaching figures and perceiving their movement as a potential threat to Martha, released a sharp series of barks, deep and reverberating, his gaze locked onto anyone coming too close. Several nearby travelers began recording with their phones, while others hastily backed away, creating a widening circle around the chaotic scene. "You need airport police now," Klein said tersely into his radio. Ronald looked up, desperation in his eyes. "He's trying to help her," he pleaded. "Please, don't take him away." But the image of a large German shepherd cawing at an elderly woman while barking frantically was not one that reassured the gathering crowd. Within moments, 2 officers from the airport police unit arrived, cutting through the bystanders with practiced efficiency. The lead officer, Sergeant Angela Cole, took in the scene with a quick, sharp eye. "What's going on here?" she demanded. "The dog's escalating. We need immediate control." Klein moved to intercept her. "Sergeant, the animal is a certified ESA and a former canine unit. The passenger may be experiencing a medical emergency. This may not be aggression but an alert." Sergeant Cole frowned, glancing from the agitated dog to the ashen-faced Martha. "He understand, but that animal is a risk if we can't control the scene. We'll separate the dog temporarily until medics arrive." Ronald stood, positioning himself between Rex and the officers. "Please, you can't take him. He knows what's wrong. He's trying to tell us something." But even as he spoke, Martha's condition worsened. Her complexion had faded to a sickly gray, and sweat now beaded along her brow. Her right hand fluttered weakly at her side, unable to maintain its grip on her cardigan. Klein recognized the telltale signs instantly. "Medical priority 1, he snapped into his radio. "Passenger with suspected cardiac distress. Escalate response." Sergeant Cole, eyes narrowing, softened her stance slightly but remained firm. "Sir, for everyone's safety, I'm ordering the dog temporarily restrained until medical has the situation under control. No exceptions." A second officer approached with a soft capture leash designed for handling service animals without causing injury or panic. Ronald looked helplessly at Martha, then back to Rex, whose entire body shook with a mixture of stress and determined purpose. Before the leash could be applied, however, Rex let out a sudden, piercing bark, one so sharp and resonant that it froze everyone in place. Then, in a gesture that stopped Sergeant Cole cold, Rex pressed his snout firmly against Martha's chest. Paws anchored on the bench as he emitted a low, continuous whine that vibrated audibly. Martha gasped, her body jerking slightly under the pressure. Ronald cried out, "She's going into distress, can't you see? He knows." Sergeant Cole hesitated, her instincts clashing with protocol. Klein stepped in again. "Sergeant, let the dog stay. He may be stabilizing her. We can position officers around them for safety, but separating them right now may do more harm." Cole exhaled slowly, assessing the situation. "Fine. Officers form a perimeter. No one touches the animal unless I give the order." The officers adjusted their stances, forming a protective ring around the bench. Matthew watched, heart racing, as Rex continued his focused, deliberate behavior. The dog's training was undeniable. This wasn't random panic. It was a calculated attempt to aid his handler. Moments later, the airport's emergency medical team arrived, a paramedic crew led by EMT Daniel Harris, who immediately knelt beside Martha with a portable monitor. "Patient is unresponsive to verbal stimuli. BP low, pulse irregular," Harris reported briskly. He glanced at Rex, who refused to move from Martha's side, gaze locked onto the EMT with an eerie intelligence. "Dog's not aggressive, leave him. He may be helping with her response," Harris instructed. Ronald sagged with relief as the medical team began their work. Electrodes were quickly applied, a portable ECG unit displaying erratic heart rhythms that drew a grim nod from Harris. "Possible ICD malfunction," he confirmed, referring to Martha's implanted defibrillator. "We'll need to stabilize and transport immediately." Klein leaned in. "This started with the dog's alert. Without him, she might have collapsed in line." Sergeant Cole, watching carefully, nodded in grudging respect. "Good call then, we'll keep the area secure until they move her." Ronald sank to his knees beside Rex, stroking the dog's fur with trembling fingers. "You're a good boy, Rex. You're saving her life." The German Shepherd remained unwavering, pressed against Martha as the paramedics prepared for transport. Matthew, standing nearby, exhaled a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "I think that dog deserves a medal," he muttered under his breath. Klein offered a faint smile. "He just might get one. But first, let's make sure she pulls through." Rex shifted slightly, releasing another low whine as Martha's eyes fluttered open weakly for a moment, her gaze unfocused, lips moving soundlessly as the medical team prepared the stretcher. The low hum of the portable ECG monitor filled the air around the small clearing the security team had hastily established near the family screening lane. Paramedic Daniel Harris, kneeling beside Martha, frowned as the readout displayed irregular, fluctuating heart rhythms. Ronald clutched Martha's hand tightly, the lines of worry etched deeper into his already weary face. Rex remained pressed against her side, unmoving, his breathing shallow but controlled. The German Shepherd's body remained coiled like a spring, alert to every flicker of her fragile state. Nearby, Sergeant Angela Cole kept her eyes trained on the unfolding scene, her initial impulse to separate the dog now fully replaced by the realization that Rex was no ordinary animal. His presence was calibrated, deliberate, and undoubtedly helping. Supervisor Klein exchanged a glance with Matthew Ortiz. "You need more than paramedics," he said quietly. "Get airport medical involved." Full response. Matthew nodded and quickly relayed the request through his radio. Just then, Martha stirred faintly, her lashes fluttering open as she inhaled sharply. Her gaze landed first on Rex's large head resting against her, then shifted upward toward Ronald's anxious face. "Ronnie, I'm all right," she whispered hoarsely, voice barely audible. Ronald leaned in, brushing a stray lock of silver hair from her damp brow. "You fainted, love, Rex." He wouldn't stop until they called for help. Martha gave a weak smile. "Silly old dog, I'm fine. Just She made a small motion as if to sit up, but Harris gently placed a restraining hand on her shoulder. "Ma'am, I'm concerned about what I'm seeing. You've had episodes before?" Martha shook her head slowly. "Just some dizziness now and then. My heart's always been stable," Ronald quickly interjected. "She had an ICD implant 2 years ago after her surgery. Her last checkup was normal." Harris exhaled, not entirely convinced. "You're showing signs of potential arrhythmia. I strongly recommend we transport you to a hospital right now." Martha, her stubbornness surfacing through the haze of fatigue, shook her head again. "I'm not going anywhere. I just need rest. The flight, our granddaughter." Her voice cracked, the effort to speak clearly too much. Ronald, sensing her resolve, turned toward Harris. "Doctor, is there a way we can check her here first? Rule out anything serious. She'll feel better knowing before we cart her off somewhere unfamiliar." Harris hesitated, then glanced at a uniformed figure approaching through the crowd. A tall man in a navy blue jacket bearing the insignia of the airport's medical services. Dr. Michael Grant, the on-call physician, had been monitoring the commotion remotely and now stepped briskly into the circle. "I heard the call," Dr. Grant said, eyes sweeping over the scene. He knelt beside Harris, quickly scanning the portable monitor. "Have we got—" Harris summarized the vitals. Dr. Grant nodded, then addressed Martha directly. "Mrs. Keene, I understand you want to continue your journey, but we need to be certain your heart isn't sending us a false sense of security. I have a handheld cardiac scanner I can use to cross-check what we're seeing here. Would you allow me to do that?" Martha opened her mouth to refuse but caught sight of Ronald's pleading eyes. She sighed. "If it will help us move along faster, all right." Dr. Grant retrieved a small device from his field kit, a sleek pen-like scanner that connected wirelessly to his tablet. "This won't hurt. I just need you to stay still and breathe normally." As he began the scan, Rex shifted slightly, letting out another low whine. Dr. Grant paused briefly to observe the dog's unwavering focus. "He's quite a partner you have," he commented softly. "He saved my life more than once," Martha murmured. "Guess maybe he's trying to do it again." The scanner beeped softly as data streamed onto the screen. Dr. Grant's eyes narrowed as the lines traced irregular waves. He adjusted the device, repeating the scan across 3 points on her chest. A tense beat of silence followed. Then he exhaled sharply. "Mrs. Keene, your heart rhythm is unstable, more unstable than you realize. It's not just fatigue or nerves. Your ICD may not be functioning correctly. Ronald's breath caught. Are you sure? Dr. Grant met his gaze directly. Absolutely. There's a high risk of ventricular fibrillation if we don't intervene now. She needs to be moved to the airport's medical facility immediately for further stabilization and monitoring. If we delay, we risk a catastrophic event. Martha's stubbornness faltered, the weight of his words sinking in. But the flight, she whispered weakly. Ronald cupped her cheek, voice thick with emotion. No flight is worth this risk, love. Emily will understand. She needs her grandmother alive, not pushing through a heart episode in the sky. Dr. Grant rose swiftly. Paramedics prep for transport. We'll escort her to the medical suite directly. Harris and his team sprang into motion, carefully positioning the stretcher beside the bench. Sergeant Cole coordinated with her officers to clear a path. Supervisor Klein leaned toward Ronald. We'll secure your belongings and ensure everything is handled properly. Focus on your wife. Ronald gave a grateful nod, voice tight. Thank you. As Harris began stabilizing Martha for the short transport, Rex emitted another soft whine and attempted to climb onto the stretcher beside her. One of the paramedics instinctively reached to block him, but Dr. Grant raised a hand. Let him stay close. He may be helping her stay calm. The team adapted, allowing Rex to walk alongside as they carefully transferred Martha to the stretcher. Ronald kept one hand firmly on the dog's harness, murmuring quiet reassurances. The small procession began moving toward the terminal's medical suite, a hush falling over the previously chaotic checkpoint. Travelers looked on in hushed curiosity, many still recording, others whispering about the remarkable service dog who had sounded the alarm. Dr. Grant moved ahead of the group, radioing ahead for the medical team to prepare for an incoming cardiac emergency. Behind him, Rex kept pace with the stretcher, eyes locked on Martha, every fiber of his being attuned to her fragile state as they turned down the corridor toward the medical suite. The small corridor leading to the airport medical suite seemed impossibly long to Ronald as he walked beside the stretcher, his hand gripping Rex's harness tightly while keeping a constant eye on Martha. The German Shepherd moved with precision, pressed close to the side of the stretcher as if tethered by invisible threads of loyalty and instinct. His deep brown eyes never strayed from Martha's face. Dr. Michael Grant led the way, speaking rapidly into his radio, his words clipped but calm. Patient arriving now, suspected ICD failure, unstable rhythm, possible prior cardiac arrest. Prepare full cardiac response. Ronald's heart pounded in rhythm with their hurried steps. Every glance toward Martha tightened the knot in his chest. Her glaze had gone worryingly pale again, her eyes fluttering in and out of focus, her breathing shallow and uneven. A sheen of cold sweat covered her brow. Rex whined softly with every faltering breath, his instincts clearly screaming that something was gravely wrong. The medical suite's automatic doors hissed open as they arrived. A small but fully equipped room awaited them, staffed by a team of 3 additional medical professionals, nurses and another physician on call. Monitors blinked to life, a defibrillator unit stood ready nearby, and an oxygen rig hung prepared for rapid application. Get her hooked to the primary ECG, full leads, Dr. Grant ordered, immediately moving to Martha's side as the paramedics transferred her onto the hospital bed. Let's confirm device status first. One of the nurses, a brisk woman named Claire, worked quickly to attach the electrodes. Another prepared the monitor. The screen lit up, displaying a chaotic, irregular waveform. Dr. Grant leaned in, studying the patterns with narrowing eyes. Device interrogation ready? He asked. Yes, sir, Claire replied, already connecting a specialized reader to Martha's IC. A device meant not only to regulate rhythm, but also to store critical performance data. The seconds stretched unbearably long for Ronald, who stood just inside the doorway, gripping Rex's harness with white-knuckled fingers. Rex remained perfectly still now, his intense gaze riveted to Martha, his every muscle taut with a nervous energy that communicated clearly to everyone present. Danger. Dr. Grant watched as data populated across the reader's screen. Then he froze. His jaw tightened visibly. Device has not fired, he said slowly. No pacing events recorded in the past 30 minutes. Claire blinked. No pacing. Dr. Grant shook his head, pacing, no corrective pulses. The device isn't functioning. Ronald's voice cracked as he stepped forward. What does that mean? Dr. Grant turned, voice steady but urgent. It means the implant stopped working. Her heart is trying and failing to maintain its rhythm on its own. The risk of sudden cardiac arrest is extremely high right now. If this isn't addressed immediately, she could go into full arrest within minutes. Ronald's knees nearly gave way. Dear God. Rex let out a short, sharp bark that startled even the seasoned medical staff. Easy boy, Ronald whispered shakily. But the dog's instincts had clearly picked up on the shift in the room, the deepening crisis that hung palpably in the air. Dr. Grant was already in motion. We need external pacing. Get the transcutaneous pads on her now. Prepare the defib for standby pacing mode. Nurses scrambled into action, attaching adhesive pads to Martha's chest and side. The machine beeped rapidly as settings were adjusted. You'll override her pacing externally until we can get her stabilized and ready for full transport, Dr. Grant explained, though his voice remained clipped, focused entirely on the task at hand. Ronald swallowed hard, his mouth dry. If we hadn't stopped, if Rex hadn't, Dr. Grant met his gaze briefly. She would likely have collapsed at the gate or mid-flight. Without the dog's warning, we wouldn't have caught this in time. One of the nurses chimed in. External pacing engaged. The machine emitted a steady tone. Ronald watched helplessly as Martha's body gave a slight twitch in response to the electrical impulses, now keeping her heart rhythm in check. Dr. Grant observed the monitor carefully, nodding once. We've got capture. It's not perfect, but it will hold her long enough to prepare for transport to the cardiac center. Ronald leaned heavily against the nearest wall, waves of emotion threatening to overwhelm him. His wife of 53 years lay motionless, sustained by machinery and the relentless loyalty of the dog beside her. Rex shifted closer, resting his chin on the edge of the bed, tail unmoving, breath low, and his body language spoke volumes. He knew this battle wasn't over. Dr. Grant took a brief moment to address Ronald. We'll call for an emergency cardiac transport now. The device failure is catastrophic. Without immediate intervention, she could deteriorate rapidly. Ronald nodded numbly. Do whatever you must, just save her. Rex emitted another soft whine, gaze flickering between Martha and the medical team. The monitors beeped steadily, an artificial lifeline against the unseen danger lurking within Martha's chest. Dr. Grant stepped aside to speak quickly into his phone. Cardiac team, this is Dr. Grant. IC failure confirmed. External pacing initiated. I need an immediate ambulance with advanced cardiac support. ETA as fast as humanly possible. Meanwhile, Claire adjusted an IV line while another nurse administered a stabilizing medication. Ronald barely registered the movements around him. His entire world had narrowed to the fragile figure on the bed, and the unwavering dog keeping vigil at her side. She's strong, he whispered hoarsely to Rex. He's stronger than this damn machine, Rex responded with a low rumble of agreement, never taking his eyes off Martha. Dr. Grant returned to the bedside. Mr. Keene, the ambulance will be here in under 5 minutes. We'll continue pacing her until transfer. Ronald nodded silently, reaching out to stroke Martha's hand, the skin cold beneath his fingers. He swallowed hard, voice breaking. Feel her lean in. The faces, the monitors beeped on, an urgent counterpoint to the shallow rise and fall of Martha's chest. The danger was still very real. One misstep, one delay, and the tenuous hold on life Rex had fought so hard to secure could slip away at any moment. The tense hum of the portable pacing machine filled the cramped medical suite as Martha lay still, her frail body jolting faintly with each external pulse. Ronald remained close, one hand clutching hers while the other gripped Rex's harness so tightly his knuckles had turned white. Dr. Grant hovered over the monitors, issuing clipped commands to the team. Keep the external pacing steady, bolster fluids. I want her as stable as we can manage before transport. Claire glanced at him nervously. Doctor, the external capture is fluctuating. We're maintaining rhythm for now, but it's not ideal. Dr. Grant's jaw clenched. I know. Her device is fully non-consensible. The pacing is buying us time, nothing more. He leaned closer to Ronald. Mr. Keene, there's something you should understand. The airport clinic wasn't designed for sustained cardiac pacing. We can stabilize her for transport, but if we lose capture during transfer, we'll need immediate intervention. Without an internal device replacement, she's at critical risk. Ronald swallowed hard. Do you mean she could? Dr. Grant nodded solemnly. Yes, we're walking a razor's edge. The ambulance is en route, but even a brief delay or instability could be catastrophic. Claire checked her watch. Doctor, cardiac transport ETA 4 minutes. Dr. Grant exhaled sharply. Understood. Let's hold the line. He reached for the backup pacing module in the emergency drawer, but as he inspected the device, his expression darkened. Damn! The auxiliary pacing unit we had logged is missing from inventory. Last requisitioned and not replaced. Claire's eyes widened. So this is the only external support we have right now? Correct, Dr. Grant said grimly. And it's showing signs of instability already. Ronald's head spun. He squeezed Martha's hand tighter, whispering softly, Hold on, love. Just hold on. Rex whimpered low in his throat, his body rigid, sensing the awful things in front of him. Outside the medical suite, the hallway buzzed with the activity of the airport's emergency response team, clearing a path for the incoming ambulance. The word of a near-fatal cardiac incident mid-Samal had spread quickly among staff. Sergeant Cole had taken position near the door, coordinating with paramedics and ensuring no delays once transport arrived. Suddenly, amidst the flurry, a voice cut through the tense air. Excuse me, I'm Dr. Evan Parker. I'm a cardiologist. May I assist? All heads turned as a tall man in his early 40s, wearing a traveler's blazer and carrying a slim leather bag, entered the suite. He held up his ID badge from Charleston Cardiac Center. I was waiting at gate B12 when I heard the call for emergency cardiac support on the PA. If there's anything I can do, I'm here. Dr. Grant blinked, then nodded quickly. You're a gift from heaven right now. We've got a 72-year-old female with ICD failure, unstable rhythm, external pacing only. Our backup unit's down and primary capture is shaky. Dr. Parker immediately shed his jacket, rolling up his sleeves as he approached the bedside. Let me see the tracing. Claire handed over the tablet with the live ECG feed. Parker's eyes swept the screen. Intermittent loss of capture, output voltage is maxed. We need to optimize vector positioning or risk losing her. Dr. Grant stepped back to give him space. Suggestions? Manual vector adjustment first, Parker replied calmly, already moving to adjust the electrode pad. Her lead placement is marginal. With her body habitus and the device failure, we need maximum contact surface. He worked quickly but gently, repositioning the pads on Martha's chest and lateral side, carefully increasing contact pressure while monitoring the response. Rex watched intently, his gaze flickering between the two doctors and Martha's face. As Parker made the final adjustment, the ECG tracing steadied, the rhythm line smoothing into a more consistent pattern. The room exhaled collectively. Capture improved, Parker confirmed. Still external, but this should hold better during transport. Dr. Grant nodded gratefully. Excellent work. You may have just saved her life. Parker gave a modest smile. Glad I was nearby. He turned to Ronald. Sir, your wife is still critical, but this buys us more time. Once she reaches the cardiac center, they can implant a temporary pacing wire or replace the ICD entirely. Ronald swallowed a sob, voice trembling. Thank you. I thank you. Parker placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. We're not out of the woods yet. Stay strong for her. Claire's voice broke the brief moment of calm. Ambulance 2 minutes out. Prep for immediate transfer. Parker, would you be willing to ride with us? If capture fails en route, your expertise could mean the difference. Parker didn't hesitate. Of course. He retrieved a portable pacing monitor from his bag. Parker's nicer than any of the firms, and so they double-checked everything. Let's hook it in as secondary backup during transport. The team worked in swift harmony, connecting Parker's device in parallel with the existing setup, providing redundancy for the precarious journey ahead. Rex emitted a low chuff of approval, sensing the renewed purpose in the room. Dr. Grant crouched briefly to address the dog. You've done your job, old boy. Now let us take her the rest of the way. Rex's ears flicked, eyes unwavering. Ronald leaned down, stroking the dog's head. You hear that, boy? You stay close to me now. She'll need us both when this is over. The monitors beeped steadily as the sound of approaching sirens grew louder outside the suite. The rhythmic beeping of the external pacing machine echoed through the medical suite as final preparations for transfer were completed. Dr. Parker checked the backup pacing line he had connected, ensuring redundancy remained intact. Dr. Grant paced near the head of the bed, his gaze flickering anxiously between Martha's monitors and the doorway. Any word on that ambulance? He asked sharply. Claire checked her radio again, frowning. We were 2 minutes out, but we just got an update. A traffic incident near the south terminal entrance has caused a delay. They're rerouting, but ETA is now extended. Could be 5 to 7 minutes. A sharp silence fell over the room. Dr. Grant swore under his breath. That's too long, we can't afford to lose pacing stability. Ronald's heart clenched. What's happening, he asked, voice thick with fear. Dr. Parker spoke calmly but urgently. There was an accident near the access road. They're clearing it, but your wife is too unstable to move through the terminal ourselves without full transport support. We need to hold her stable here a little longer. Ronald gripped Martha's hand tighter, his knuckles white against her pallid skin. Beside the bed, Rex emitted a low rumble, eyes flickering between Martha's face and the activity around the room. His entire body remained poised, ears back, tail still, gaze unblinking. Martha stirred faintly, her eyelids fluttering. Alarmed, Ronald leaned in. Stay with me, love, just hold on, help is coming. Dr. Grant watched the monitors anxiously as the pacing spikes continued to register inconsistent captures. We need another layer of support, he murmured. Parker, can we? Before he finished, Rex shifted deliberately. With calculated slowness, the German shepherd stood, placed his front paws gently on the lower edge of the hospital bed, and leaned in until his broad head rested squarely against Martha's chest. The room froze momentarily at the unexpected movement, but Ronald's voice cut through. Let him, he knows what to do. Dr. Parker's eyes widened in understanding. He's pressure Taylor, he said softly. Tactile stimulation, grounding response. Dr. Grant nodded quickly. Let him work. Rex maintained steady, firm pressure against Martha's chest, his massive head applying gentle, constant contact. Through years of canine training, he had learned this precise behavior, using his body weight and presence to provide grounding during episodes of distress, often helping regulate breathing and calm panicked arrhythmias. Martha's breathing, which had grown shallow and erratic, began to slow slightly, the tactile feedback helping her body fight the growing tide of fatigue and fear. Good boy, Ronald whispered, tears welling in his eyes. You keep her with us. Dr. Parker glanced at the monitor, captures stabilizing again. Whether it's coincidence or not, his presence is helping. Claire nodded, her voice hushed. I've seen therapy dogs do similar things, but he's something else. The minutes dragged unbearably slow. Every tick of the pacing machine, every twitch on the monitor seemed magnified 100-fold. Outside the suite, Sergeant Cole's voice crackled over the radio. Ambulance is moving through now, final approach. Dr. Grant exhaled sharply. Let's be ready the second they clear that door. Ronald stroked Rex's back gently, whispering broken words of encouragement. The German shepherd remained still, his breathing slow and deep, every muscle relaxed yet alert, anchoring Martha in the fragile space between consciousness and collapse. Martha stirred again beneath the gentle pressure. Rex, I feel him, she whispered faintly. Ronald leaned in closer. Yes, love. He's here. He's helping you. A soft smile ghosted across Martha's lips, the first flicker of light Ronald had seen in what felt like hours. The good boy. Always watching, she breathed. Dr. Parker monitored the ECG closely. She's hanging on. We can keep this stable for now. Outside, the muffled wail of sirens finally grew louder, approaching the terminal access point. Claire relayed the update. Ambulance is 10 seconds out, security is escorting them straight in. Dr. Grant moved swiftly to the door, ready to coordinate the handoff. Get the main door clear. Parker, stay with her on the stretcher. Parker nodded firmly. Understood. Rex, sensing the change in the room's energy, lifted his head slightly but kept his body pressed close, his presence unwavering. Ronald whispered again, voice trembling. Just a little longer, boy, don't let her drift. The German shepherd's deep eyes locked onto Martha's pale face, as if silently urging her to hold on a little more. The monitors beeped steadily, a fragile electronic heartbeat racing against the cruel hand of time as the approaching stretcher team prepared to enter. The sharp clang of the medical suite doors flying open cut through the taut air as the ambulance crew finally burst in, their gurney rolling fast beneath deft hands. Sergeant Cole cleared the last path with crisp commands while Dr. Grant pivoted toward the team leader, paramedic supervisor Elena Torres, her face already taut with urgency. ICD failure, external pacing only, unstable capture, he briefed rapidly. Cardiac transport priority 1. Patient can't tolerate transfer without active pacing. Cardiologist Parker is riding. Torres nodded. We've got full cardiac kit on board. Move her now. The team converged. Dr. Parker remained at the bedside, fingers steady on the pacing device leads as the transfer began. Ronald hovered beside him, one trembling hand still resting on Rex's back. The German Shepherd rose fluidly with the shift in motion, keeping his head low, eyes trained on Martha. The bed tilted as they lifted her onto the stretcher, securing straps swiftly. Rex paced once around the gurney, then pressed his body alongside it, head aligned with Martha's chest again. Ronald's voice cracked. Please, let him stay with her. Elena met his desperate gaze, her voice softer than expected. He's helping. We'll make room. The decision drew a glance from Dr. Grant, who gave a curt nod. He stays. Moments later, the gurney rolled fast through the corridor, the sound of wheels echoing against the sterile walls. Rex trotted with calm precision beside the moving stretcher, tethered only by Ronald's steadying hand, yet instinctively staying pressed close to Martha. The weight of his presence kept her tethered in that fragile liminal space between life and fading consciousness. The ambulance's rear doors yawned open. The team moved with practiced choreography, loading the gurney as Elena coordinated from within. Ronald climbed in after Martha, pulling Rex up gently with him. The German Shepherd obeyed without hesitation, leaping gracefully into the narrow space and positioning himself once more at Martha's side. Dr. Parker secured his monitoring gear as the vehicle lurched into motion, sirens wailing through the airport's periphery. The rhythmic beeping of the pacing machine filled the small compartment, layered over the pulsing heartbeat of the siren. We've got capture, Parker confirmed to Elena, maintaining for now. Ronald sat hunched on the small jump seat, one hand on Rex's shoulder, the other gripping Martha's limp fingers. Her eyelids fluttered with each pulse, shallow breaths drawing in under the guidance of the machine and her own fragile will. Stay with me, love, he whispered again. Rex shifted, placing his head once more across Martha's chest with deliberate firmness, his body vibrating faintly with every intake of breath. His training, years old now, had not dimmed. Pressure grounding, tactile reassurance, critical for moments exactly like this. Elena adjusted oxygen flow and intravenous lines. Parker monitored the pacing capture on his device and the ambulance's ECJ in tandem. For 3 long minutes, the ride remained steady. Then, without warning, the pacing line beeped a single irregular spike, an out-of-sync tone that made Parker's head snap up. Loss of capture, 1 beat off, he announced sharply. The team adjusted, Elena preparing to increase voltage. Another irregular beat followed. Ronald's heart lurched. Before Parker could answer, Rex suddenly whined sharply and shifted his body, rising on his forelegs to apply increased pressure against Martha's upper chest. Head pressed hard beneath her collarbone. The sudden movement drew startled looks, but Parker's eyes widened with understanding. He feels it, lid drift or threshold loss. He's grounding again. Elena moved swiftly. Voltage up. Parker adjusted pacing settings, fingers flying over the controls. The pacing spikes steadied once more, capture returning in line with Rex's firm contact against Martha's chest. Her breathing, which had hitched unevenly with the capture loss, smoothed marginally again. Back on, Parker confirmed. Dog just bought us precious seconds. Elena exhaled. He's not leaving that spot until we're through. Ronald buried his face briefly in Rex's fur, voice thick with emotion. You're saving her, boy, you're saving her again. The German Shepherd remained fixed, unwavering. The ambulance barreled through city streets, weaving fast through traffic under the guidance of a police escort. Dr. Parker continued adjusting pacings in real time, keeping pace with the fragile dance of electronics and biology. Ronald's world had narrowed to the steady, insistent rhythm of the pacing machine and the warm, reassuring weight of the dog holding his wife to life. The ambulance skidded to a controlled stop at Charleston Cardiac Center's emergency bay, doors flying open as the transport team surged into action. Paramedic Elena Torres guided the gurney through the double doors, flanked by Dr. Evan Parker, who monitored the pacing readout with unwavering focus. Ronald stumbled out behind them, hand gripped tightly around Rex's leash as the German Shepherd trotted alongside the moving stretcher, head low, body tense. The cool sterility of the cardiac trauma room enveloped them instantly. Gleaming machines, an elite team of cardiac specialists prepped and ready, led by Dr. Karen Blake, the hospital's senior electrophysiologist. 72-year-old female, ICD failure, unstable rhythm, external pacing in transit. Patient experienced transient loss of capture, stabilized with manual adjustments and tactile intervention from service animal. Parker relayed briskly as the team transferred Martha onto the surgical bed. Blake's sharp eyes flicked to the monitors, her voice cool but urgent. Team, full device interrogation now. Prepare temporary transvenous pacing. Let's get control of this rhythm before we lose her again. A flurry of movement ensued. ECG leads reattached, IV lines reinforced, emergency ultrasound activated. Rex stood poised by Ronald's side, eyes locked on Martha as he emitted a low, steady whine, his body vibrating with the urgency that had driven him from the airport through the harrowing ambulance ride. Ronald kept a trembling hand on the dog's neck. "You're still with her, boy. Don't stop now." Dr. Blake studied the initial scan results, brow furrowing. "External pacing insufficient. We need to go internal. Prep the sheath." A cardiac nurse moved swiftly to insert the temporary pacing wire, guided by ultrasound as Blake manipulated the catheter. The room held a collective breath as the live tracing flickered, then steadied. "Capture achieved," Blake confirmed. "She's in sinus rhythm with temporary support." Ronald sagged against the wall, tears spilling freely down his lined cheeks. "Thank you," he whispered hoarsely. Blake wasn't done. "Let's see why that ICD failed. Full device interrogation and get me the manufacturer's alert log." Technicians tapped rapidly at consoles as data from the implanted device streamed onto the hospital's secure diagnostic platform. Moments later, one of them paled. "Doctor, look at this. Device flagged as non-functional starting 33 minutes prior to emergency presentation. No output since then." Blake's eyes narrowed. "Confirmed that." "Confirmed," the technician replied. "Internal log shows progressive battery failure with abrupt total loss. This is consistent with the manufacturer's class we recall issued last month." Blake's head snapped up. "Recall? This unit?" "Yes, doctor," the technician said grimly. "Manufacturer flagged this model, serial lot included, for critical battery defect. FDA alert issued. Notices were sent to registered patients." Ronald's heart lurched. "But we never got anything. Nothing." Blake turned to him, her expression shifting from clinical focus to compassion. "When was the last address update filed for your wife's device registration?" Ronald's breath caught. "We moved 2 months ago. We updated everything with our doctors, but we didn't think about the device registry." Blake nodded understandingly. "He happens more often than you'd think. The recall alert would have gone to your old address. Without it, no one would have known your wife was carrying a device at risk of catastrophic failure." Ronald's knees nearly gave way. "So it was failing, right there at the airport." "Yes," Blake confirmed solemnly. "Based on this log, had your wife proceeded through the security checkpoint without intervention, she likely would have experienced sudden cardiac arrest within minutes. The stress, the electromagnetic environment, any trigger could have tipped her into fatal arrhythmia." Her gaze shifted to Rex, whose eyes remained fixed on Martha's pale face. "If not for your dog's alert, we would be having a very different conversation right now." Ronald choked on a sob, dropping to his knees beside Rex and pulling the dog close. "You saved her, boy. You saved her life." Rex leaned into the embrace briefly, then returned his focus to the hospital bed where Martha's chest rose and fell under the steady guidance of the temporary pacer. Parker approached Ronald quietly. "Mr. Keene, your wife is stable now, but she'll need a new permanent device implanted once her heart recovers. The recall was known, but these things, sometimes they fall through the cracks. Your dog gave us a fighting chance." Blake joined them. "Rex's training, his instincts, extraordinary. Without that, we'd be filing a death certificate right now." Ronald shook his head slowly, voice raw. "I always knew he was special, but this is beyond words." Behind them, the surgical team continued monitoring Martha, the room's tone shifting from frantic intervention to cautious optimism. The crisp autumn air outside Charleston Cardiac Center tasted sweeter than Ronald Keene had ever remembered. 1 week had passed since the nightmarish day at Denver International, a week during which Martha had been stabilized, undergone surgery for a new state-of-the-art ICD, and steadily regained her strength. Ronald stood at her side as hospital staff wheeled her toward the main entrance in a wheelchair, the bright sun warming her pale face. Rex trotted proudly beside them, his leash slack in Ronald's hand, amber eyes watchful yet calm. Martha reached down with trembling fingers to stroke the German shepherd's thick neck. "Good boy, my brave boy," she whispered, voice still weak but full of emotion. Ronald cleared his throat, blinking against tears that seemed to flow far too easily these days. "You did it, lad. You brought her home." The hospital's chief cardiologist, Dr. Blake, met them at the entrance with a smile. "Mrs. Keene, you have one remarkable guardian here. I hope you both understand just how extraordinary his intervention was." Martha nodded, her eyes moist. "I do, more than words can say." As they prepared to leave, an unexpected escort awaited them. Sergeant Angela Cole and Supervisor Klein from TSA had flown in from Denver, specifically for this moment. "Mr. and Mrs. Keene," Sergeant Cole began formally but with warmth, "you're here on behalf of the entire airport security and emergency response teams. We wanted to thank Rex personally for what he did that day." Klein stepped forward, holding a small velvet box, "and also to present a token of our gratitude." Inside lay a custom-engraved medallion reading "Hero of the Terminal Rex, K9 Guardian." Ronald's voice caught. I don't know what to say. Just say thank you to your incredible partner." Rex tilted his head as Klein knelt to clip the medallion onto his collar, his tail thumping once against the ground. Martha chuckled softly. "Oh, he knows." Word of Rex's heroic actions had spread far beyond the hospital. News outlets had picked up the story and social media had exploded with admiration for the aging but valiant German Shepherd. But one particular response surprised them all. 3 days after Martha's successful surgery, Ronald received an urgent call from the vice president of the ICD manufacturer. "Mr. Keene," the man had said gravely, "we owe you and your wife an apology. Due to a system gap when you changed addresses, the recall notification failed to reach you. That should never have happened." Ronald had listened silently. The VP continued, "We are assuming full responsibility for all medical costs associated with this event. In addition, after hearing about Rex's extraordinary intervention, we would like to formally recognize him." That recognition arrived 2 days later in the form of an official letter and a beautifully crafted plaque, presented to Rex, K9 rescue hero, in gratitude for safeguarding life when technology failed. The letter also included a lifetime supply of premium veterinary care and nutrition, a gesture that left Ronald speechless. Now, as they prepared to board their flight home, this time with clearance and full medical clearance secured, an impromptu ceremony awaited them at Denver International. Police agents, police officers, and medical staff gathered near the same checkpoint where the ordeal had begun. Supervisor Klein addressed the small crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're here today to honor a very special member of our airport community. On that critical day, Rex demonstrated not only extraordinary training, but extraordinary heart. Because of him, Mrs. Keene is alive and well today." A ripple of applause swept through the group as Klein turned to Ronald. "Mr. Keene, would you and Rex join us?" With Martha watching proudly from a nearby chair, Ronald led Rex forward. A TSA K9 handler approached with a special harness, emblazoned with honorary K9, emergency responder. As the harness was gently fitted, Rex stood tall, ears alert, eyes scanning the crowd with calm dignity. Ronald swallowed hard. He can't thank you all enough. Rex is, well, he's more than a dog. He's our family, and he saved my wife's life in a way none of us could. The applause swelled again, several agents wiping their eyes discreetly. Sergeant Cole leaned in to whisper, "He earned every bit of this." As the small ceremony concluded, passengers nearby who had gathered to watch broke into spontaneous applause. A child approached timidly with her mother, asking if she could pet the hero dog. With Ronald's nod, the child knelt beside Rex, who lowered his head gently to meet her small hand. The moment captured hearts and cameras alike, soon flooding social media with images of courage and connection. Later, as they boarded the plane home, Martha rested her head against Ronald's shoulder, fingers entwined with his. Rex lay at their feet, calm and vigilant. "You know," Martha whispered, "he was always my miracle." Ronald kissed her temple softly. "He's our miracle, love, and thanks to him we have many more tomorrows." As the plane lifted into the sky, Rex glanced up once at the couple he had guarded so fiercely, then rested his head across Martha's feet, content. Somewhere far below, the hum of the airport faded away, but the bond forged that day between a woman, her devoted dog, and the life he had saved would resonate long after wheels had touched back down on the familiar ground of home. If this story moved you as much as it did us, consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel for more real-life stories that remind us of the quiet heroes around us, sometimes on four legs. What part of Rex's journey touched you the most, and where in the world are you watching from? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.